The morning air was bitterly cold, carrying with it a sharp wind that cut through even the thickest coats. For Daniel, however, there was no thick coat, just a frayed, faded one he had picked up from a donation bin 2 winters ago. He sat hunched on a park bench, pulling the coat tighter around his thin frame. His hands were rough and cracked from the cold, his lips chapped and pale. Daniel's stomach growled loudly, a deep, aching reminder that he hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. The ache was no longer sharp. It had turned into a dull, constant emptiness that seemed to drain his strength with each passing hour. From where he sat, he could see the bakery across the street. Through its wide glass window, warm golden light spilled out onto the frosted sidewalk. Inside, shelves overflowed with freshly baked bread, pastries dusted with sugar, and pies that filled the air with the sweet scent of cinnamon and apples. Daniel's mouth watered, but he quickly looked away, as if punishing himself for even imagining the taste. People passed him without slowing down. A man in a business suit glanced at him, but quickly looked away. A mother ushered her child to the other side of the path. It wasn't new Daniel had grown used to being invisible. In a town of busy lives, people didn't have time to see someone like him. He lowered his head and muttered under his breath, "Just one warm meal. That's all I need today." It was then that Emily appeared. She was in her late 20s with a warm scarf wrapped snugly around her neck, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was walking quickly, coffee in one hand, her phone in the other. She might have passed Daniel like everyone else, but something made her slow down. She noticed the way he clutched his coat tighter, the way his eyes lingered just a little too long on the bakery window. And there was something in his face, not just hunger, but exhaustion, the kind that comes from years of carrying invisible burdens. She hesitated, then walked up to him. "Hi," she said softly. Daniel looked up, startled. Hello, you look cold," she said, "and hungry." He gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "Yeah, well, I guess it shows." Emily bit her lip, then glanced toward the bakery. "Wait here, okay." Daniel didn't answer. He had learned not to hope for much. People often said kind things and then disappeared. But just minutes later, Emily came back, carrying a steaming paper bag and a cup of hot coffee. She handed them to him without a word. Daniel stared at the food, almost afraid to touch it. "You bought this for me?" "Of course," Emily said, sitting down beside him on the bench. "Everyone deserves to eat." Daniel's eyes watered as he opened the bag. Inside was a warm breakfast sandwich and a large golden muffin. The first bite was almost painful. It had been so long since he'd eaten something hot that his body seemed to need a moment to remember how to enjoy it. "You didn't have to sit with me," Daniel said quietly between bites. "I wanted to," Emily replied. "Sometimes it's not just food people need. Sometimes they need to feel seen." For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt like a person, not a problem, not a shadow, but a person. Emily could have left after that breakfast, but something in Daniel's story stayed with her. As they ate, she asked him questions, gently, without pity. She learned that Daniel had once worked in a small factory, had a wife named Maria, and a young daughter. But when the factory closed, the bills piled up. Then came the accident, a fall from a ladder while doing odd jobs. The injury kept him from working for months, and medical bills swallowed what little savings they had. His marriage couldn't survive the stress, and eventually Daniel found himself alone, sleeping in shelters or on park benches. Emily's heart ached as she listened. "You don't deserve this," she said. "Life doesn't always give you what you deserve," Daniel replied, his voice calm but heavy. That afternoon, Emily went home and couldn't stop thinking about him. She opened her laptop and began typing, a heartfelt post on social media sharing Daniel's story. She didn't ask for money, just for anyone willing to help with food, clothes, or a job opportunity. She expected a few kind comments. What she didn't expect was the wave of responses. People from all over town offered to bring meals, warm coats, and even job interviews. The next morning, Emily returned to the park with Daniel, only to find several people waiting, strangers with grocery bags, blankets, and offers of work. Daniel stood frozen, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," Emily said, smiling. One man, Tom, stepped forward. "I run a small construction company. We need someone reliable. It's not much, but it's honest work. You in?" Daniel's voice shook. Yes, I'm in." Months passed. Daniel kept his promise. He worked hard at Tom's construction company, showing up early and staying late. The first paycheck he received, he didn't spend on himself. He bought a box of pastries and delivered them to the local shelter. Slowly, his life began to rebuild. He found a small, affordable apartment on the edge of town. He learned to cook again, filling the kitchen with the smell of homemade soup and bread. He even started saving, something he hadn't done in years. But Daniel never forgot the park bench, the hunger, or the young woman who had stopped to see him when no one else did. He began volunteering at the local food bank every Saturday, serving hot meals to those in need. He didn't just hand out food. He sat with people, listened to their stories, and reminded them that they mattered. One afternoon, Emily visited the food bank to see him. "You look good," she said with a smile. Daniel grinned. "I feel good. For the first time in years, I feel strong." It was another cold, snowy evening, one of those nights when the wind seemed to bite right through the skin. Daniel was walking home from the food bank when he spotted a teenager huddled outside a diner, knees pulled to his chest, shivering. Daniel knew that posture. He knew that kind of hunger. Without a second thought, he walked into the diner, ordered 2 hot meals to go, and came back out. He sat beside the boy and handed him a paper bag. "Eat," Daniel said softly. The boy looked at him, unsure. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel smiled, his eyes warm. "Because I know what it's like to be hungry, and I know how it feels when someone cares." The boy's hands trembled as he opened the bag and took a bite. Daniel stayed beside him, talking and listening, just as Emily had done for him. Somewhere deep inside, Daniel knew this was how change happened. One act of kindness at a time, passed from one person to another, like a flame that refused to go out, and as snowflakes drifted down around them, the park bench of yesterday seemed far away, replaced by something new: hope. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is beyond measure. One warm meal can lead to a new beginning. One act of compassion can turn struggles into strength. And sometimes all it takes is sitting beside someone and saying, "I see you."